Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment or two. Let the last of the attendees filter in. If I can just ask that everyone that can hear me currently to please mute yourselves throughout the presentation. Okay, then, and out of respect for everyone's time, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Beth Albach, and I am the Assistant Program Manager for the Southeast Pennsylvania Apex Accelerator, formerly known as PTAC, and I want to welcome you to today's presentation. As a refresher, our mission is to assist businesses in learning how to be successful when selling to government agencies, both all federal, state, and local, through seminars like this one or one-on-one counseling. We are funded by a cooperative agreement with the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs, and all of our services remain free of charge. There are many Apex Accelerator locations nationwide, and our Southeast Pennsylvania office serves the following counties: Berks, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Lehigh, Montgomery, Northampton, and Philadelphia counties. If you are joining us from a county that is not on this list, please let us know and we can provide you with the contact information for your local Apex Accelerator. But again, everyone, my name is Beth Albach. I'm the Assistant Program Manager and a Government Marketing Specialist, and I'd like to initiate the second in this September series, where we will be discussing the basics of developing a government marketing plan. Our guide through this session today is my colleague and a senior government marketing specialist, Bruce Downing, hosted at Widener University. Bruce has over 30 years of experience in business and education and has served as an executive in a number of information technology companies. He utilizes his experience starting 4 businesses in the IT services sector, all of which obtained government contracts. And we are lucky to have Bruce as part of our team to help support small business with their government procurement journey. The only thing we ask is that if you have any questions, to please post them in the chat. We'll make sure that we have enough time at the end to answer them. And I'm going to hand it over to Bruce. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Beth. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about really an introduction to the process that we find successful for our clients in marketing to the government. So in our agenda today, we're going to be talking about, again, how to develop that marketing plan, which involves many steps that I'll go through this morning. Finding information on agencies and prime contractors as prospects. So as you know, any kind of marketing, you've got to have prospects or suspects, and we'll talk about really that's probably the most challenging thing, is how to find people who want what you want to sell. We'll talk about how you find those opportunities for bidding on current contracts, and then other online research resources to help you with that. And everything we talk about here today, again, is the topic that you can discuss with your Apex counselor. So this is going to be a lot of steps, a lot of things to have to do, but we will help you through each of those stages. So prospecting for opportunities first. The basic questions, which seems kind of simple, is what agencies buy what you sell. So again, you're going to have to find out, who's in that market, who are the purchasing people, who makes the decision to buy within the agency. You want to know who's the final decision maker, who supplies them now. That is, what's the competition, and how much competition is there? What purchasing vehicles do they use means that each agency has its own preference for the kind of contracts that they can put out there to people who offer their services. And there are different biases among the different agencies as to how they do that. We'll cover some of that. So then you obviously have to ask yourself, okay, in that arena, how can you compete? So we say you ought to know the target first. Start with the target, and we usually recommend select 3 to 5 agencies to target. Now, when we say this, we're talking about companies that are already in business, companies that maybe have some existing customers in the commercial space. And later on, we'll talk about subcontracting within this environment in order to help get people into the business if you haven't really been in business very long. So you need to first understand the mission of these agencies. You need to know their organization, because within any agency, they might have sub offices that do their own purchasing. So for example, the Department of Defense, they have Army, Navy, Army Corps of Engineers, a lot of different sub offices that do their own purchasing activities. Again, what contract vehicles do they prefer? And we'll talk about what those are. They sometimes have a support prime. So particularly in larger contracts, they will assign a prime contractor to find other contractors to help with a large project. So that's not very common today, but it does sometimes still happen. Do they have a preferred vendor list? Well, particularly if they're buying materials of some sort, they might have quality control plans that you have to subscribe to, and they often will have a process where they pre-qualify a vendor based on their capabilities. And then only those preferred vendors can bid on certain kinds of contracts. We also want to plug into their small business support organizations. So every agency has a small business utilization office. They are tasked with trying to help small businesses get into government contracting in terms of things like, who should I be talking to? How do you buy this kind of goods? And we can help you find those small business support people. So again, in contract prospecting, who are the people you really want to talk to? Well, at the agency level, contracting officers are the only ones who are legally responsible for purchasing. That means they are the only ones who legally can post a request for quote, request for bids, any of this, what they call solicitations. So solicitations is just the government name for, requests for proposals, requests for quotes, requests for information. They're the only ones who can publish those. However, the end user or the program managers, those who really know what they need, are the ones who are your key targets. We've often found that maybe a program manager says, oh, well, we need somebody outside to help us with this and this. And they might be the ones that have the budget control. They're in charge of a particular program area in the agency. Well, they set the requirements for the purchases. And quite often, we found this a number of times, that the requirement definition that they send to contracting officers is not really sufficient to execute a contract. So I won't go into stories this morning, but trust me, the contracting officers sometimes put out solicitations that you will look at and say, that isn't going to work. So anyway, these are the people you want to get in touch with early if you can. So those are your best prospects. Now, within prime contractors, and again, a prime contractor is someone directly responsible to the government for the fulfillment of a contract. And prime contractors often have subcontracting opportunities. We'll talk more about that later. But with the prime contractors, one way you can find out who to talk to is if you go into that company's SAM registration. And in yesterday's seminar, we talked about SAM, and we will have another one later in how to navigate SAM. But if you're not familiar with it, you need to be listed in SAM as a valid contractor. And so all these large companies that might need prime contractors have to be listed in SAM. And in that listing, they put their government point of contact. They actually list a person and a phone number. So if you can find that person, basically what you want to be doing is asking them how you can get in to be a subcontractor for them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the types of purchases based on what they call the federal acquisition regulations. Federal acquisition regulations are the Bible for purchasing people. They have to fulfill or they have to comply with these regulations. Now, a lot of people think, well, federal acquisition regulations are for the vendors. They are not. They are the requirements for the contracting officers, and so they will require of you certain kinds of things based on their need to comply with the FAR. So there is a process called the simplified acquisition process. And that means that if the purchase is supposed to be less than $250,000, it's supposed to be set aside for small businesses. That is, only small businesses can bid on it. Now, I put mostly in parentheses there because sometimes they'll say, well, I'm not sure a small business can actually do this. So they must have at least 2 small businesses that are qualified to bid before they have to comply with the set aside for small business. So they will often put out something called sources sought or request for information, asking small businesses, can they do this? It's not going to get you a contract, but it's just for information purposes for them. Okay, micro purchase threshold is under $10,000. That is, if the bid is going to be under $10,000, they can actually use a purchase card. So they use MasterCard and Visa. The purchasing agent might have a credit card that they can buy up to $10,000 worth. And quite a few of our clients have these relationships where they have a purchase card. Again, it's called a merchant account with your bank to be able to take MasterCard and Visa. Now, the thing is that no competition is really required. In other words, they can choose anybody they want to give that business to, and it's open to large and small companies. So one of the biggest challenges is to be able to find people who typical purchasing is done with these credit cards. Okay, more on the types of purchases. Any purchase over $25,000, any opportunity over $25,000 must be posted on the Federal Business Opportunities, or the FBO. This is now on the SAM.gov site. So if the intended amount is over $25,000, it's got to be, the solicitation's got to be posted there. If it's a purchase of over $250,000, that's above that simplified acquisition threshold I just talked about. It can be full and open competition to anybody. Now, in addition to that, any contract over $750,000 for goods and services, except $1.5 million at construction, if that if the award goes to a large business as the prime contractor, that large business must submit to the agency a subcontracting plan that dictates that how they are going to fulfill their subcontracting obligations on the contract. So their plan has got to include how they're going to identify, qualify, and use subcontractors. Now, if you looked at subcontracting maybe 3 to 5 years ago, there was a lot of sort of potential fraud out there where large companies were calling up small companies just to use their name, not giving them any business or anything. And the SBA, Small Business Administration, has really cracked down on that. And if they're doing that, if a prime contractor is doing that, they can be blackballed from getting any contracts, and that has happened. So the way to find, again, if there is a subcontracting plan or some way to do that, generally the people who control that within a prime contractor's office are called the small business liaison officers or sometimes called the small business, yeah, I'm blanking on the term, supplier diversity officer. Yes, because we'll see in a little bit, the certification as a small business, woman-owned business, minority-owned business, veteran-owned business, these large prime contractors have to try to help the agencies meet their quotas. Okay, now purchasing vehicles. This gets into a little bit of difficulty here. Again, this is one of those topics that we will constantly be working with you on if you're one of our clients. But over the years, the open market sort of process was that a contracting officer would publish some kind of a solicitation, request for quote, let's say. Vendors would then supply their quotes and their prices and information. And then based on the number of offers and the kind of offers they got, they would make a decision as to who to give the award to. Now, awards are typically made based on three basic principles. Number one, the technical proposal, that is how you can meet the needs, how you can meet the requirements set up in the solicitation definitions. Secondly is your past performance. Now, again, government agencies really don't like to work with brand new businesses, but you need to provide evidence of past performance. Now, not necessarily contracts in the government. You can have, business you've done in the commercial space, and that indicates that you have the ability to satisfy a legal contract. That's all they're looking for. It doesn't have to be with government. And the third is is the pricing. So they, many times in these requests for proposals, they will actually publish a rating scale of what percentage they're going to apply to your technical solution to the problem. Secondly, a different percentage to your past performance, and third is pricing, maybe. So that will actually be published, how they're going to use that. Now, there's another trend, though, in what's called GWACs, or government-wide purchasing. GWAC stands for government-wide acquisition contract. What this is a contract type that, as the words suggest, any agency can buy off of these contracts. So particularly, let's say, an IT business, there might be IT platforms that several agencies are going to be using, and or problems in government that they need IT solutions for. Well, they'll publish the opportunity to be on one of these contracts, maybe only 3 to 5 years. So they'll only publish the opportunity to get on this kind of a contract, and you might not even see it if you miss the time slot for applying for that contract. There are also special programs such as the 8A program for minorities, and that is undergoing a significant change right now. I won't get into it today, but it's for small disadvantaged businesses, primarily minority-owned businesses. Other programs such as Ability One, that is contracts given to companies that use disabled individuals of some sort, physically or mentally disabled, to fulfill the obligation of the program. So those are the kind of things that you might not see on a regular basis. But now trending in these days is what they call IDIQs, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. As the name suggests, the delivery time, or when you need to supply it, is indefinite. The quantity you need to supply is indefinite. So what this is it's a contract mechanism where they might issue a contract to 30 or 50 different companies for something. And then when they need it, they pre-qualified those people as being able to supply it. So they just issue a purchase order against that existing contract. So they don't have to go out and publish another solicitation. They don't have to go out and say, oh yeah, now we need this. So one simple example is take the military. the Army, Navy, et cetera, they have these huge warehouses full of things that they need to supply to the troops and the ships and everything else. So, they don't want to have to put out a solicitation every time they want to buy something. So they will have a group of vendors that they've pre-qualified. And when they need something, they will issue a purchase order to fulfill their obligations in their warehouses. But, this is also a type of contract that is becoming very popular. Okay, so now let's get to marketing. When you register in SAM, it sets a record for your company in this thing called the Dynamic Small Business Search Database. It's managed by the Small Business Administration. It is not SAM, so don't get confused there. It's a separate database that when you register in SAM, you automatically get a record with certain kinds of information you put into SAM. This database is used by many contracting officers and prime contractors to find people who can do what they want. So obviously, if you're in there, it's a small business database. So right away, they know you're a small business. So if they're looking for small businesses, or let's say they're looking for a small business that's an electrical contractor in the Philadelphia area, they can find those kinds of people in this database. So it's quite often used. Not too long ago, I had a client that just had signed up for, maybe he'd been signed up with us for about 60 days. And he does glass coverings for, UV protection, a lot of other things. But he did have some blast controls, for example, non-shattering if a bullet hits some window or something. And he got a call based on his registration out there, got a call from a military base saying that they wanted to consider those kinds of coverings for their buildings, and asked him how they do it. He got a $36,000 contract. So when you want to add information to this, because you don't really, in the SAM registration, you really don't tell anybody what you actually do. You put in NAICS codes and maybe PSC codes, but those are so broad that there's nothing in there that you can say really tells what your specialties are. So what you have to do is go through a system called SBA Connect system, and they have to give you permission to access your data in this database. And what you need to do then is go in and add what we call a capability narrative. That's just, a paragraph or two about what you do. It's not a brag sheet. You don't want to say your kids are great, your dog is, won a championship, all that stuff. It's only a place to put in what it is your company does and wants to sell to the government. Secondly, you want to add keywords that also match your NAICS codes to the extent that they can. But the keywords are very key because, they will be looking for people who say they do a particular kind of work. So let's take, for example, if you're janitorial services, you want to put in not just janitorial services, but do you do outside maintenance? Do you do windows? Do you do, wall coverings, whatever it is? So you need to have keywords that describe what you're doing. You will then, particularly if you are certified as a minority company or woman-owned company or a veteran-owned company, those certifications will be listed in this system. So you need to go out there and make sure it's listed. And then you also have the opportunity to add a few key references. Again, there is a reference section where what you want to do is just put a few company names and maybe the title of a project you did with them. But there's fields in there to put in all sorts of information, such as a person you work with, all sorts of other things. And you don't want to put all that information in there, mainly because all of that stuff changes so fast. You don't have to keep going back in here and updating your information. So all they're looking for really is, yes, you've been in the business, you've done a few projects in the area that you are bidding on. So that's a good place to put those evidence of past performance. The other thing you're going to do is develop a capability statement. Now, further on in our GovCon series here over the next 2 weeks, there is a presentation on how to develop a capability statement. But basically, the capability statement is a summary that you want to use to tell somebody the basics of your company and what you want to sell to the government. So, this is kind of just a word template. This is nothing cast in concrete, but you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, you give contact information, your website, your codes. When you register in SAM, you get a cage code and a unique entity ID number. And then if you have any certifications, now those could either be government certifications or they could be, in your industry. If you're a manufacturer, for example, your ISO certifications and things like that could be important there. So what you really want then is just a little summary of who you are, a list of your products and services, the basic capabilities you might have special capabilities that might differentiate you and differentiators. And then again, a listing of a few of your key customers to indicate past performance. Now, there's nothing cast in concrete on these titles. So you could, if you have just a good listing of your products, just say, products and have a bulleted listing. And then, how you work and how you can get stuff to the contracting officers quickly or whatever. But again, the only reason for this is not a glossy brochure that shows everything about you and big pictures and all of that. It's really just if you contact, for example, a prime contractor, and you want to be considered as a sub, you'll need to send them this. If you contact a contracting officer or somebody in an agency who might be interested, you send them this as a beginning. So this is one of the things that people in the procurement business in agencies or prime contractors, they expect you to have one of these that tells them the basics, who you are, what you offer, and then particularly if you have a good website, they'll probably go to your website. And we usually recommend you have a government page on your website, so they only have to make one click and look at a tab that says government contracting. And you can have a copy of your capability statement on that tab too. Okay, now how do you work with primes? Well, obviously, just like you need to know what an agency does, you should know what their business model is before you make contact. So particularly if you see that they are, and we'll talk about how you find what contracts they maybe had in the past. So if you find somebody that maybe has contracts in the past in a particular area that you'd be interested in, you'd need to know exactly what kind of things they use and what they offer and whether they're a big company or not. So you really need to do some research on what the company does. That's kind of obvious. So next, you need to understand their requirements for subcontractors. So do you have unique competencies that they can use? Do you have security clearances? Quality programs for manufacturers that they need to be sure that if you're like a machine shop, that you have a good quality program. If you have specialized IT or management systems. So for example, a client I was working with actually does recruiting. And one of their standouts is that they have a very good IT system to identify recruits and manage engagement. So another one that's not on here might be is your location. So if there's going to be a major project in this area, let's say a building project, the builders might, the contracts might go to some builder in Texas, but they're not going to send their plumbers and electricians up here. They're going to look for local talent. So that's another thing that you can do. But, we from time to time run into a client that says, well, I'm not really sure what I want to do here. I can do a lot of different things. I just want to try to get into some government business. So they'll go out to prime contractors and say, hey, tell me what you need and I'll do it. Well, that's a loser. That is really, it's not going to work. So when you contact them, you really do need to lead with your qualifications and past performance. Send them a capability statement. And again, you need to know who does their subcontracting plans. So how do you do the markets research to find these prospects? Well, it's sort of 3 steps. We'll go through these in a little bit here. But the first thing you want to do is review past contracts for your types of products or services. Then you identify agencies and research the agency websites. As I said before, know what their organization chart looks like. And then you need to find and review current bidding opportunities that are coming out all the time. So how do we do this? Well, and to find past contracts, you want to find what agencies purchase what you sell, obviously. You want to maybe find prospective prime contractors who have had large contracts. There is a way in the system I'm going to talk about in a minute to understand how purchasing is organized and managed. So the website I'm going to show you here in a minute, actually, when you find these contracts, it'll tell you the kind of a contract that it is. So, you'll be able to learn that. And then also, you'll be able to learn about your competition. So if you know of a company that you're competing with on a regular basis, you can go out there and find out, how much government business are they doing, and find out a little more about what they are successful in. So to get contract histories, I recommend the Federal Procurement Data System. Now, there are some other easier to use in some ways to get summary information out there, Fed spending and others. They actually go against this same database that the Federal Procurement Data System is. The Federal Procurement Data System is a database of all contract activities between government agencies and vendors. So if there's a new award made, it gets posted in here. If there is a purchase order against an existing contract, like one of those IDIQs I mentioned, it gets posted in here. If there is a change in the scope of the project, it gets posted in here. So anything that happens that has any kind of a implication for monetary value or change in a contract, it's going to get posted on the Federal Procurement Data System. Now, you will see and some people will say, oh, well, you don't need to go into fpds.gov because it's all now on SAM. Well, that is not correct. Some people who don't understand how these systems are working are misstating that. There are summary reports that might be useful to you out in SAM on the government data bank out there, but it's not really going to give you the kind of details, or you're not going to be able to search for the kind of details that you want. So you can search on your NAICS codes, you can search on your PSC codes, you can find out what business has been written by certain government offices, you can find out who, what your competition gets in the way of contracts, etc.
Bruce, before moving on, we just had one question with relation to the Federal Procurement Data System.
Right.
Wondering if this data was also used to find for the state and local level.
No.
Okay.
No, this does not give you state and local. This is federal only. Okay, at the state level, there are each different state has its way of doing that, and we again can teach you how to work with the states. But for example, in Pennsylvania, just like in the federal government, you have to register as a Pennsylvania vendor, and then you look at a thing called the e-marketplace, which publishes past stuff and awards. And I will talk in a minute about another mechanism we can give you that will allow you to see what states and local are doing. but FPDS is simply just the federal government. Okay, another thing that you're going to need to get familiar with is this FBO and the contract opportunities over here. This is in SAM. So, you know, when you registered your entity, you went over and got all this stuff done. And then when you want to look at contract opportunities, this is where the posting of all solicitations will be. And you need to get familiar with the kind of filters you can use on this system to filter down to seeing exactly what it is you want. So I mentioned that, you know, if an agency is not sure that they can give a small business set aside, they might publish something called an information request for information or sources sought. Well, you can actually go out and do a search on FBO for that specific kind of a contract, a sources sought contract. And a lot of our clients do that on a regular basis. So again, this is another thing we can teach you about. And just again, as I said from the beginning, every step in this we have found to be crucial for you to be successful. And we can work with you, you know, at no cost. We advise, we educate, and we can help you through all of this step by step. One of my favorite sayings is you can eat the elephant, but it must be one bite at a time. So, okay. Another thing you're going to run into in trying to get government business is the General Services Administration, the GSA. And this is just a little description of their mission statement. But, you know, I want you to be aware that GSA gets involved in all sorts of different procurement activities. But their basic mission is to help the agencies buy high quality, low cost goods and services from reliable commercial vendors. There's nothing in here that says their purpose is to help small businesses. That's not the business they're into. They are the ones who try to make government purchasing more effective. Now, if you've ever taken any kind of a business course and talk about marketing, you know, the professor will always tell you that you can market yourself as high quality or as low cost, but not both. Well, they try to get both. So that's just, when you go into this, you have to just really be aware that they're trying to make it easier for contracting people. Now, their main buying programs are buying and selling products and services, the federal supply schedules I'll talk about here in a minute. They also have a real estate management group that manages buildings, either leased or owned by the federal government. They have an IT group that's technology acquisition management, and this is where a lot of the GWAC contracts are. They have a site I'll point you to in just a minute, which has procurement forecasts. So what do the agencies intend to buy in the future? And then they have a variety of shared services and information that they publish on their site. But these are the main programs GSA gets involved in. Now, their federal acquisition service uses different variety of contracting vehicles. So they do use IDIQs, these GWACs, and then the multiple award schedules. Now, this is what's been cost, a lot of people term this the GSA schedules. And just beware that they will, excuse me a minute here, losing my voice. The federal supply schedule contracts are a 5-year contract that a vendor can apply for, and it's used by any federal government buyers, and some states use these contracts also. So it's one of those 5-year contracts, and it is an IDIQ kind of contracts. So any federal government agency, if they want something and there is a contract out there for that particular thing on the federal supply schedule, they can buy it directly off of those contracts. It requires an application process that pre-qualifies you as a vendor. And the goods and services that have contracts are organized by what they call schedules. That's just an old-fashioned term It used to be that what you would put out as a sales sheet now, they used to call those price schedules. So it's a way of contracting by the kind of stuff they buy on a schedule. Now, involved in that, I mean, even if you're not going to maybe apply for one of those, they have what's called GSA Advantage. So any vendor that gets one of these 5-year contracts, they have a GSA Advantage listing on their site that is public information. So every vendor that has a contract has their terms and conditions of the contract posted on this GSA Advantage, because this is sort of like the government marketplace where agencies will go to see if GSA contracts have what they want to buy, so that the federal purchaser does not have to go out and publish a new solicitation, or they don't have to publish their own IDIQ contract. They can just simply buy off of this. It's like having a catalog of things they can buy. The interesting thing, though, is it's valuable marketing information for you, because this is public information. And particularly if you find that one of your competitors is selling using a GSA schedule, you can actually go to GSA Advantage, find out their terms and conditions, which most of the time will include pricing. So if you're wondering, or in the service categories, if you're wondering, can I actually, how much can I spend? How much can I charge, excuse me, to the government for my particular kind of service? Well, to get a GSA contract, you go through quite a negotiation stage. So if the pricing that you see out there on GSA Advantage that's offered by a competitor, you can kind of take that as information on where you need to be for your pricing. They also have something called a sales query, and this provides information of sales data by the kind of schedule. So you can go out and find out, let's say in the last quarter, how much overall government was spent in this particular category. Or you can go in and find out if you have a particular contractor in mind, maybe competition. Are they getting any business by having that GSA contract? And I should say that, one of the issues here is that historically, about 60% of contract holders get no business off of the GSA schedule contract they have. There's a number of reasons for that. I won't go into it this morning, but one good thing to find is that if you're considering one of these contracts, to go out to the sales query and find out how much action there's been on that particular contract. Now, the other thing I will warn you about is, when you start into this government contracting, and some of you probably already had these emails come to you and say, oh, now that you're a government contractor and all of that, we can offer you a program. We can guarantee you a 5-year contract. So sign up with us. Well, all they're doing is taking you through the GSA process to get on one of these scheduled contracts. But it's going to cost you low end anywhere around $5,000 to $6,000. But the ones that do this very vigorously are charging $18,000 to $20,000 to do this. Our Apex system is set up to provide this for you, to help you with that process free of charge. I know that Beth had mentioned previously that I was in the IT business. I had GSA schedule contracts, and I know how this works. There's others in our Apex family who can help you with this too. So beware, don't spend a lot of money on anything people offer you unless you talk to your Apex counselor. Okay, I mentioned that GSA also has procurement forecasts. They have this site called acquisition.gov, and you'll notice it starts with their homepage and then federal acquisition regulations and stuff. If you need to look up a federal acquisition regulation, you would go there. But what you're looking for is to go into the agency recurring procurement forecasts. And this is the direct link into that forecast. So on the left-hand side, when you get on this page, you will see these are basically the home pages for the different for the different agencies. So if you want to find out more about Department of Health and Human Services, all you need to do is click on that. It'll take you to their homepage. But most importantly, the right-hand column here, if you were to click on this agency procurement forecast, different agencies have different ways of presenting their procurement forecasts. Some are just nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet with some information on what they intend to buy over the next 2 to 3 years by program and other things. Basically, that's mostly what they do, is that they have particular programs that they know are currently funded or intend to be funded in the future. And they will say what those programs entail, what kind of procurement they intend to do. There might be some information on the type of contract they want to issue. But most importantly, or almost always in these forecasts, it will be listed by a program, and there will be a program manager listed with contact information for that purpose. So basically, if they have a procurement listing for something in your area in a program, this is really good information because, as I mentioned first, the person you really want to talk to is the person who has the responsibility for making a program work in the agency. So, they may have procurement forecasts for buying goods. They might have procurement forecasts on a particular program where they'll need consultants. So, you're not going to find it always in here, but these are really, it's a good place to look for opportunities in the future. There's other bid sources. I mentioned on the need to resupply troop stuff and stuff. That's handled by the Defense Logistics Agency. They have a particular site called the Defense Internet Bid Board System, or DIBS. It's very difficult to navigate, and it's going to be what they use to put out contracts for purchases, and many times they will be fairly low value. It is difficult to use, but we can try to help you with that. Each individual agency site will definitely have information on how to do business with this agency, and may have some other information on their site. There's lots of commercial bid searching programs that they'll ask for a fee. Now, we have offered to our Apex clients a thing called bid match. So we pay a fee for being on this particular system, but we offer it to our clients for free. So it's open to all Apex clients at no charge. And what we do is we develop a search profile based on codes, but more importantly, keywords. So, if you're already registered to say I'm ready to get going at this, I already mentioned that when you want to update your profile in the SBA DSBS site, you want to put good keywords in there. Well, you're going to also, when we get you ready for the bid match service, you're going to have a good set of keywords that we can use in your profile. So we set up the search profile for you, but the results of that search is sent to your email every day. So these are brand new opportunities each day. So each day as they come out, it's sent to you. Now, here's a partial list of the sites served. The Fed BizOps, where I said if it's over $25,000, it must be posted there. These other sites, and there's many, many others out there that it searches on the federal. But going back to the question about state and local, this bid match service actually does publish by the states that you want to look at. It will state the state and local opportunity listings. Now, when I say it sends you these results, when you get the result, it will be a brief description of what it is, and then it will provide a link to you for where you go to get the details of that opportunity. Now, at the state and local listings level, many states and local groups use third parties to publish their opportunities and to quote on their sites. So a lot of state procurement groups use third party that you'll have to sign up for to get the specifics of a particular contract. They're typically not very expensive, a few $100s, for the year. But it's, it's something you need to be aware of. But the bid match service will give you opportunities for state and local bids. So in summary, the things we want to do are to, first of all, go out and find the agencies that are writing contracts for you, find the prime contractors, understand how they're managing purchasing, what kind of contract mechanisms do they use, and learn about your competition. So past contracts will give you this information. And as I said, FPDS is the place to go for that. Looking for brand new opportunities. So these are past contracts. New ones, you need to be keeping in touch with the Fed Biz Ops. The research procurement forecasts I mentioned. Use the bid match program when you're ready for it, that we will offer for free. And then again, agency websites can have some good information also. So that's the summary of, what we say is the best process to understand, learn about, and be successful. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. If you have questions.
And thank you, Bruce. What a very wonderful, informative slideshow here. We've had many requests for it. So yes, just to let everyone know, we will be sending a copy of these slides to all attendees. We have a few questions in the chat from Keisha. She had asked, are there any standard clearances that companies could apply for before winning a contract that you're aware of?
In terms of security types of contract things, not really. And there's two levels of security. One level is simply access to a site. And that can be done if you get the contract. You could get, you have to get security clearance for the people who are going to be doing the contract. But you can't do that in advance. Then the other is, if particular companies or individuals have security clearances. And that's a whole can of worms in and of itself. But typically you have to have a contract already to get a security clearance of any kind. So there's not much you can do in advance.
Okay, follow that. We have a question from Ray S. We sell telecommunication services needed for new or relocated office. Would the target buyer be the government real estate department or the winner of a solicitation? Think this is more of an FDPS question.
Yeah, well, it depends on who the agency is. If it's in a building that's managed by the Public Building Services, the GSA, they are the property managers for that, and they would have control of what the modifications have to be or how to outfit that. If it's another kind of agency, yeah, it would have to be just a separate contract that they would publish for help with that. So, yeah, okay.
Okay, if anyone has any further questions, we've covered the ones in the chat. You feel free to unmute yourselves and, speak up. And if not, right, as we currently speak, I am putting into our chat box the link to our Southeast Pennsylvania Apex Accelerator website. You can find a lot of information on our program there, resources for small businesses, as well as a link to our YouTube channel, where we will follow up with events such as this, posting them to our YouTube channel in totality. If you would like to go back and review this particular seminar, that you will have access to that. And then finally, into wrapping up, as we had mentioned, that this is the second of our GovCon series. We will be continuing next week with 3 more events, debunking myths about government contracting, the sam.gov walkthrough, and how to develop a capability statement. And within the chat now, you have the links to register for those. We look forward to seeing you at those to round out this series. And again, if anyone has any questions, our Southeast Pennsylvania Apex.org is in our website, and our Southeast PA Apex at kutztown.edu is how you can, contact us regarding any further questions. Jen, you can go right ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi. In reference to the third-party agencies that are targeting, ever since I've entered our information, I'm getting phone calls and emails from many people. I'm having a hard time deciphering what's authentic and who's a third party, because they're making themselves look like they're from the government.
Yep, that's a tough one because they are very good at that. But again, I think the operating principle should be ignore them or talk to your Apex counselor, because there's lots of people who try to intercede in this process, knowing that it's difficult for small businesses, and quite often, the tendency is, wow, if I could just have somebody like this help me through all of this stuff, even if it costs a little bit. But that's what we're here for, is to help you with all of this stuff. And so, yeah, I would say don't spend any money on anything unless you review it with one of us.
Yeah. It's more time of like, I get 5 minutes into a phone call, or I literally during this call received an email, and it's just the time that we're spending to decipher what's real and what's not.
Yeah. Well, and as you get more and more involved in this and see more of what's online and all, you'll be able to just cancel those out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So but it is annoying.
I would just, if it's okay, Bruce. Hi, this is Natasha Borchin, Program Manager. Apologies for joining late. But one suggestion I do always tell, it's like you will be able to tell by the email extension. So if it doesn't say .gov or .mil or .edu, the chances are it's a business trying to solicit your business.
Okay, good.
And they do have an obligation to, at the very bottom of those emails, indicate that they are not a federal agency.
Oh.
So sometimes they're at fault, and they don't always say that, but some of the emails you will find at the very bottom, it will say, we are not a federal agency.
Yeah, good advice, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a couple more questions come into the chat. If an opportunity is listed on sam.gov as a small business set aside, where the description matches what we do as a business, but the NAICS code isn't one that we have currently registered, can we still submit a bid as a small business?
Yes, you can still submit the bid, but I would suggest that what you do is immediately go into your SAM registration and edit it to add that NAICS code. So you can go ahead with trying to do the bid, but when they get your bid, they may go out and look at your SAM registration to see if you have that NAICS code. And I know it's kind of a problem because it's difficult to know what NAICS code a government contracting officer is going to use. And sometimes it just doesn't even make sense what they pick, but yeah, so I would say that, yeah, if it's really of interest, go ahead and add that NAICS code in your SAM registration, and then go ahead and bid it.
Okay, Keisha, you have your hand raised if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I have a question about the bid match. So I have like a UEI number in SAMS, but I haven't received my cage code number. I have 3 local opportunities. So would I still be able to get enrolled in the bid match program without the one that you guys offer, without being registered in SAM, or would I need to be registered in SAM?
No, you could get it from us, but what we want is to make sure that you are advanced enough as a company that you can use that information properly.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
And again, that would be with your counselor to decide when and how is best to do that. But yes, we can set you up and bid match, that way.
Okay, cool.
But
Thank you.
again, when you're saying local, are you talking about local government or federal?
I'm talking about local government.
Yeah, so you wouldn't even need the cage code yet. So yeah, but if you
Yeah,
want,
well,
yeah,
'cause more so, I was just making sure that I didn't need to, because I know a lot of times it's like companies or programs want you to be registered in SAM completely before they'll give you any additional information. And I'm not 100% registered in SAM, but I have already won 3 local government contracts on my own. So
great.
yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Okay.
thank you.
Definitely talk to your counselor, because it's not really, you've done the heavy lift in getting the UEI. So
Yeah.
going further into the cage is usually not all that more time consuming, but that is definitely something that you can discuss with your counselor.
I'm not even sure who my counselor is, but I'll send someone an email to figure it out. Thank you.
Shoot us an email to that at kutztown.edu. We'll figure that one out for you.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have, well, final question from Allison. As a new business owner, I use my past experience as a professional employee in bidding for contracts. How can I best, play to those skill set?
Well, the problem is the government only wants to deal with a legal entity. So yes, it's important your background in terms of being able to fulfill a contract, but what they're looking for is that the legal entity, that is the company that is committing to the contract, has past performance. So yeah, that's a question we get a lot. A lot of times somebody is setting up a new business after you have several years developing skills and they set up a new business. But no, they don't want to be dealing with an individual's background. They want to be dealing with a legal entity and see that that entity has fulfilled contracts legally.
All right. And again, if anyone has any further messages, please feel free to unmute yourself. And we're looking pretty wrapped up here. Bruce, I want to thank you again. This was a wonderfully informative session. And again, if anyone has any further questions, you can always contact us at the SEPA Apex at kutztown.edu. And that will be the end of today's session. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week.